Good afternoon to you. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to today's tropical weather outlook for Monday, May 25th, 2026. Happy Memorial Day to all of you out there. Let's start off today's tropical weather outlook by taking a look at the sea surface temperature anomalies across both basins, of course, in the Atlantic and the Pacific. And starting off in the Atlantic basin, we still have these cooler sea surface temperature anomalies out here in the eastern Atlantic, while the rest of the deep tropics are generally at or right above normal. But the concentration of the warmest sea surface temperature anomalies right now are in the western Atlantic, especially in the Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico, and also especially this area here in the southwestern Atlantic and in the western Atlantic in general. We are seeing a huge warm-up in sea surface temperature anomalies there, and this will definitely be an interesting place to watch, especially as we head throughout the next several weeks, as once again, we are monitoring the potential for some tropical development to occur in early June, but it's especially looking like a big rainmaker right now for Florida, and we will talk about that later on in the video, but especially in general in the early season off the southeast coast and in the Gulf of Mexico and Caribbean especially, we watch for tropical development closely, as those are the typically favored areas for development early on in the hurricane season. So we'll be monitoring that very closely. But obviously as well, besides that, we have a very warm eastern Pacific with El Nino coming on here, and these very, very warm sea surface temperature anomalies in the tropical eastern Pacific, especially off the coast of Mexico. And taking a look at the Nino 3.4 region, sea surface temperature anomalies right now, at least looking at the relative Nino index, are at 0.5 degrees Celsius. So we are right at El Nino threshold, and we've been warming up since the beginning of April, and we've pretty much been in El Nino territory, sea surface temperature-wise, since at least late April, early May, and it looks like that is persisting. And we're probably going to see a huge warm-up and a huge surge of sea surface temperature anomalies, especially in the Nino 3.4 region in the coming weeks. And we'll talk about that another time. But there's definitely something to talk about with El Nino, and the fact that, especially if you've been paying attention to longer range models, it really looks like this thing is going to start cranking and picking up steam as we get into next month. In the MDR and in the Atlantic, on the other hand, the MDR has really seen a cool down in recent days in sea surface temperature anomalies. We are now below normal in the general region of the MDR here, probably especially because of the eastern Atlantic being pretty decently below normal. But a lot of this probably has to do with the fact that we have a lot of Saharan air out there in the Atlantic right now, and that kind of tends to mess with the sea surface temperature readings according to the satellite just a little bit, but definitely something that we typically see in the early season. And yeah, the Atlantic is dropping and cooler than normal right now. The SOI, on the other hand, continues to remain negative, and obviously this is a very important thing, especially when it comes to looking at El Nino, because a negative SOI means the atmosphere is responding more closely to a atmospheric response that is El Nino-like, and in the 90-day and the 30-day average now, we are both in the negatives, but especially with the 30-day average, we are at negative 12, so already seeing a strong atmospheric response with El Nino in the 30-day average, and you can see why, especially looking with all the recent daily contributions. Just yesterday, negative 31. Today, the daily contribution was negative 25. That definitely has a huge weight on the average. And this is definitely a sign that the atmosphere is beginning to respond more towards El Nino. So our El Nino is really ramping up here in the Pacific soon. And in just a matter of a few weeks, especially as we get into next month, as I've been talking about, we will definitely see the fruits of that, especially in the Eastern Pacific. But nothing is happening right now, though, tropics-wise. No activity is expected in the next 7 days, at least in the Atlantic and the Pacific Basin, so things remaining nice and quiet right now. Here's the satellite picture in the Atlantic. Not much happening, obviously. We have some convective activity in the Gulf of Mexico, moisture probably coming via the subtropical jet here, and in general across the Gulf Coast and across the southeast over the next several weeks. We are going to see a very wet pattern, in part because of things generally becoming more favorable in the Caribbean. And as I mentioned before, we're going to have a Central American gyre pattern set up, and from that we will probably see a huge moisture surge from the Caribbean northward into Florida and the southeast, especially in the first week of June. And yeah, it's going to be very wet across the next several days in the southeast, and you're definitely seeing it right now already happening with all the convective activity. Lots of convective thunderstorms here, especially popping up over Florida and some over Georgia here. But make no mistake, a lot of these places across the southeast do need it. We have significant drought conditions, especially in Florida, and hopefully with the rainfall that we will be getting over the next several weeks, the drought will subside somewhat. In the eastern Pacific, also not much happening right now. Some convective activity going on, in spots, especially here along the ITCZ, or the Intertropical Convergence Zone. That's where we see probably the most amount of convection right now. But nothing looks like it is trying to consolidate, so especially if you are along the Mexican coastline and you are trying to watch for any development that might happen soon, we're not quite looking at that yet, at least in the next week. And part of the reason why you could especially see that is you could tell by a bunch of these very fast-moving upper-level clouds here. We definitely have a lot of wind shear in the atmosphere, and obviously wind shear is bad for tropical development. And that seems to be something that's happening in both the Pacific and the Atlantic right now. So things are not favorable yet for development. And obviously because of that, nothing is expected in the next week here. And let's actually take a look at the GFS to prove that. Take it out in time here. Nothing really truly consolidates just yet. We do have that, area associated with the Central American gyre, and I apologize for any loud noise that you might hear outside. I live in New York City, so just got to deal with it. There's something that tries to develop here near the Yucatan Peninsula, again associated with our Central American gyre pattern that tries to consolidate. And we see, you see some vorticity here that tries to get going, but let me show you the 200 millibar wind pattern. There's just a lot of strong wind shear, especially near Florida and off the southeast coast. The upper level winds are screaming. And let me actually show you how that looks like with the regular wind shear map. Strong upper level winds. We literally have the subtropical jet screaming off the coast, off the southeast coast and over Florida. Easily many wind shear values within this area, probably like over 100 knots or so. So there's definitely more than likely not going to be any development that occurs, especially compared to a few days ago. Looks like, the GFS kind of tried to show something getting going and consolidating, but it's just, more than likely we're not going to see it. What we are going to see, though, especially when I switch to the relative humidity here, what you do see, especially as we head into early June here, a huge surge of moisture, again, coming northward from the Caribbean into Florida and the southeast. So that's going to supply us with a lot of rainfall, hopefully subside drought conditions, and probably bring flooding rain, some gusty winds, and general showers and thunderstorms. Honestly, in some ways, not too dissimilar to what a tropical cyclone at this time of the year probably would bring, except it would have a name to it, and there would probably be more media attention and hype just because of the fact that it has a name to it. At the end of the day, a lot of these designations that we give are really just meteorological, and they come from a technical standpoint, but at the end of the day, if you really look at it, a lot of the impacts are the same. And we're probably going to see flooding rain, especially in the early season. Tropical storms tend to bring a lot of flooding rain, and hurricanes in general tend to bring a lot of flooding rain, and often that tends to be the most underrated aspect of them. And we're going to see that across the southeast more than likely over the next several weeks, except it's probably just not going to be from one specific, storm that has a name attached to it. So please be mindful of that. But of course, especially for those in drought conditions, I guess you guys should enjoy the rain somewhat, at the very least, since hopefully that'll bring some relief and kind of moisten things out, bring balance to the atmosphere, as we all need at some point. Since Mother Nature always likes to balance things out, and that kind of tends to be the situation with hurricanes. They are a dramatic kind of force of balancing that the atmosphere does, several times a year, specifically, especially during hurricane season. And we're probably going to see the same thing play out with whatever rainfall we get over the next several weeks across Florida. With that being said, though, not much else going on in the tropics right now, at least in the Atlantic and the Eastern Pacific, but I think that'll probably change in the coming weeks. And of course, we will be here to watch it. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy the rest of your Memorial Day. I'll talk to you guys again throughout the week, and including tomorrow when we'll have another tropical update for you then. See you then.